Downsizing of the drivetrain seems to be one of the easiest ways forward to significantly cut down on CO2 emissions. Volkswagen, for one, definitely understands this because the group hasn't shied away from introducing downsized engines even in premium cars like Audis and Porsches. And a couple of months back, they introduced the Ameo and the Polo with 1-litre petrol powertrains. In fact, the Ameo 1.0 is what we have with us here today. This 1-litre engine belongs to the EA211 family of engines from Volkswagen, which includes some really peppy turbocharged 4-cylinder engines and some frugal, naturally aspirated 3-cylinder mills. The 1-litre in the Ameo belongs to the 3-cylinder kind. The little grudge that I have with this drivetrain are those pedal vibrations that you get when you get your roll on, those powertrain jitters, which I think will worsen with time. That's quite inherent to a 3-cylinder configuration, and that's my only grudge with it. You also get that inherent 3-cylinder thrum at lower revs. And the engine tends to get quite vocal when you drive past the 3000 RPM mark, and past 4500 RPM, it gets quite noisy for a petrol engine. Volkswagen makes this engine in 3 states of tune. An entry spec with a 60 PS 95 Nm output on one end, and on the other 115 PS 114 Nm output for the higher side. The engine that does duty in the Ameo resides right in between. The 1-litre engine puts out about 75 PS of power, which is on par with the 1.2-litre that it replaces. The torque, however, has gone down from 110 PS on the 1.2 to 95 PS on the 1-litre. However, out in the real world, you don't really feel any significant gain or drop in performance. With a 0 to 100 time of 16.9 seconds, it isn't exactly an eager engine, far from it. Its forte, however, lies in easy commuting around the city and lazy highway cruising. Its claim to fame is its lightweight aluminium architecture and high fuel economy. Quite a few of you asked us, why does this car with its puny engine need cruise control? Well, the answer is, it is quite an effortless highway cruiser. In fact, it feels like it was made or tuned for the highway. Out on the highway, cruising at 100 km an hour needs about 3,500 RPM, which does take a bit of toll on fuel economy. So the sweet spot is between 80 to 100, which needs about 2,500 to 3,000 RPM, where you get a decent fuel economy, you get decent pulling capacity. So overtaking even at highway speeds is surprisingly good for an engine this small. In our test, the Ameo 1.0 returned us almost 14 km to a litre in the city and over 20 km to a litre on the highway, which makes this car a frugal runabout and more fuel efficient than the 1.2 that it replaces. The engine is mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox, but unlike before, the selection for the reverse gear is now in a more conventional position, right after the 5th gear. And like before, you still have that long travel for the clutch pedal, and it's got a springy nature, so that does need a little getting used to. If you ask me, it's a little cumbersome in the city, but once you get used to it, it's fine. Despite a weak outright acceleration, the drivetrain has a fairly good drivability in the city. The steering is light too, making it quite easy to drive. Since there is no change to the chassis, the space offered remains unchanged, and so does the Ameo's excellent ride quality. It does display taut handling dynamics, but enthusiastic driving isn't exactly what this car is made for. What it is then is a frugal commuter and is an ideal step up for someone upgrading from an entry-level hatchback. The petrol variant of the Ameo was always its weak link, and if you are of the belief that the performance offered by the 1.2 wasn't really on par with your expectations from the compact sedan, well, unfortunately, the 1-litre variant doesn't do much to change that. As always, the 1.5 diesel could be the better option for you. The petrol was more suited for those looking at an efficient urban runabout, someone who had a low yearly mileage. If you are that kind of a person, if those are your requirements, well, the 1-litre could then make sense because compared to the 1.2 that it replaces, it does everything a notch better.